Welcome to Student-Led Conversations, where students lead real dialogues with the thinkers and doers shaping our communities, careers, and future. In today's episode, our student host sits down with CPA, author, and community advocate ZeNai Savage for a powerful look at advocacy, what it is, how it starts, and why it matters long before politics enters the picture. From school hallways and student organizations to statewide campaigns, boardrooms, and the communities we call home, this conversation explores how asking questions, noticing inequity, and speaking up can grow into leadership and change. Because advocacy isn't a title, it's a choice, and anyone at any age can make it.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Student-Led Conversations. I'm your host, Arpan Garwal, and today's episode is one that means a lot to me personally. It's all about advocacy, political, social, and community. For me, advocacy isn't just a word, it's a mindset. It's about believing that our voices, especially as young people, whether it's speaking out about education, equality, or the laws that affect our communities. I've learned that advocacy starts as the movement you decide not to stay silent about. I've always cared about issues like youth rights, access to education, and fairness in how decisions get made. But for a long time, I thought politics was something that happened out there, in government buildings or on TV. What I've come to realize is that politics is also personal. It's in our schools, our neighborhoods, and the everyday choices we make to stand up for what's right. That's why I'm so excited about today's episode and guest, because today we're talking about how advocacy can happen anywhere, from community service to the Statehouse, and how young people can take part in both. And my guest today, ZeNai Savage, is someone who's done exactly that. She's a CPA, a leader, and a political and community advocate who's worked to make government, business, and education more inclusive and representative. Her journey shows that you can build a professional career and fight for change at the same time. So, if you've ever wondered how to get involved in politics, in your community, or even just in your school, this conversation is for you. Because advocacy doesn't have an age limit. It just takes courage, passion, and the willingness to speak up. Let's get started. ZeNai, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you please start by sharing on how your journey into advocacy and leadership began?
Awesome, Arpan. Thanks for the intro and for having me. Where did my journey to advocacy begin? I would say actually, I didn't get into politics per se, as we typically think about it, really until 2021 or so just 4 years ago. But my entire, I think, career, growing up, going to high school, going to college, there were through lines of community service, right? Just things that I cared about being involved. I was always a leader. I always acted on behalf of another group, whether I was a captain of a sports team or in student council or the leader of an organization like in college, right? So in college, I was part of an organization, NABA, which formerly stood for the National Association of Black Accountants. I majored in accounting, and that was really the goal. The mission of NABA is to support Black business leaders at every step of the journey, lifting as we climb. I'm a CPA now. Only 2% of CPAs are Black, even less than that are Black women, right? And so being a part of a social organization like that was really my first step at like advocacy. I'm trying to get more people into the profession, trying to bring awareness to other students. Like, here's a cool profession that you can participate in, regardless of your background, what you look like, etc. And that just expanded as I went through my early professional career. Being an accountant, I was involved with a couple of legislative bodies. If they had foundations, they would ask for a bookkeeper or things like that. And then I began to get more involved I was always on a number of different boards, whether I was a treasurer or just on a board volunteering, just giving back to the community. And I began to notice disparities that existed with grassroots organizations or organizations led by people of color or just the nonprofit space in general. I just didn't
Mhm.
understand how things were funded and why they were funded the way they were. Even businesses. And then when you fast forward through like the pandemic, there are studies that show that women-owned businesses or Black-owned businesses, Latino-owned businesses did not receive the same amount of funding that other Main Street or majority-owned businesses did. So that started having me spinning my wheels, like how are the decisions being made on where money is going? And then I got more interested in how budgets were
Mhm.
developed by the city. So I just kind of went
Yeah.
down this rabbit hole of questions like who's making the decision of where the
Yeah.
money is going and why is it not equal across communities, XYZ. Um, so I thought that I would eventually run for city council or local elected official, and then I did not. And then a couple of elected officials did come and ultimately ask me to run for statewide office, which was state auditor in
Mhm.
2022. I was asked in 2021, and initially I said no because I had a really good career.
Mhm.
I didn't ever really want to be a politician in that sense. And so I said no, like, oh, I help you find somebody, but like maybe not me, right? Even though I had just been having all of these thoughts,
Yeah.
right, about how decisions are
Mhm.
made. So after a couple more conversations and kind of doing some self-thinking, I thought, actually this might be an opportunity to one, affect change, two, to understand the process more, one, be an example for other young people, women, people of color to say, like, you don't have to be a career politician to get involved. So I ultimately ran for office. I did not win, but I did travel around the state, went to 32 of our 90 some counties, and got to know a lot of people, what they care about, tried to educate people just on what my role was that I was running for. So I built good constituency coalitions. So even though I didn't win, I ended up running the statewide party for almost a year and
Mhm.
got really engaged even more in like how does politics work? How does the party system work? And
Yeah.
trying to get more young people involved. So I'll
Mhm.
stop there, but that was
Yeah.
kind of like how I got to even running for office.
No, I love that. I love how you didn't just like as a child weren't like, okay, like I want to get into politics, I want to get into advocacy. It was more as if you were going down your own path and you saw the stuff that was happening around you and you were like, why is this happening? What's going on? Who is in charge of this? And you took it upon yourself to be more educated about it and speak out about it as well. And I absolutely love that. And you also mentioned that you did run for Indiana State Auditor. So, what was there like a specific moment that inspired you to jump into politics, or was it someone who pushed you?
It was definitely there were two people, Senator Shelley Yoder, who's in Bloomington,
Hmm.
Indiana, and then Senator then, but he's the mayor of Gary now, Eddie
Hmm.
Melton. Those two definitely reached out to say, hey, we think you can do this. We need you to do this, kind of to represent the party. You're overly qualified. You have your CPA. You would be good representation, XYZ. So it was definitely the opportunity was brought to me, but I will say that the way that I had positioned probably my career and my
Hmm.
personal brand probably opened the door for that, right? Because people
Yeah.
knew that I was involved in community. People knew that I was a CPA and always trying to represent the profession and I cared about other people and inclusion and all of the things. So was just who I was. And so
Yeah.
it opened the door for this opportunity to come to me. And
Hmm.
then, like I said, I just had to really think like, do I really think that I can affect change? Do I think I can win? Even if I can't win,
Hmm.
what would be a good outcome from it? And so I just think that it was definitely win or lose, it was an opportunity for me to connect my career to community, to help other people and to be,
Yeah.
be an example of other people to get involved.
Yeah. So during that time that you were running, was there like a certain moment or a lesson that you still feel like it's something that you're grateful that you learned and you still hold with yourself to this day?
Yeah, part of it is I like to tell people I'm an introvert,
Yeah.
but I'm really like ambivert. I'm right in the
Yeah.
middle, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm thrusted out there, I can talk to people, but then sometimes I don't
Hmm.
want to talk to people.
Yeah.
But that experience taught or helped me hone being out in person, being the
Hmm.
face of something, how to help people understand a particular issue in a way that they can digest it and
Hmm.
relate to it, which is what I do in accounting now. It's like, okay, we have these financial statements. You have to explain them so a regular person can understand what's going on. So that
Yeah.
was really it was good for me to have to go around and be forced to listen to people, their
Yeah.
perspectives, and then share back, issues that were happening broader, so
Hmm.
that they can understand and why they should vote and why they should, get involved and care about these things.
Yeah. I'm the exact same way. I say I'm an extrovert based on who I'm around.
Right? Exactly.
And
Exactly.
like what I'm doing, it depends on like what kind of setting I'm in. I will
Hmm.
say when I'm like doing work for Business Professionals of America, I'm way more of an extrovert and I have like an alter ego for myself.
Right.
Yeah. So on our pre-call that you actually mentioned community and mentorship several times, and I think that's something that connects with me and a lot of Gen Z. So is there any advice that you'd give to students that are trying to find mentors or navigate setbacks?
Yes. For the mentor piece, I was just super involved in
Mm-hmm.
different organizations. So naturally through there, a lot of my mentors or people that I knew that were older than me or more established in their careers came out of those connections, whether it was NABA or the Indiana CPA Society. I got involved in Urban League Young Professionals, right? So just kind of being around in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
I also um, networking, I wasn't afraid to talk to people who didn't look like me.
Yeah.
So, I've had mentors or people in my careers who were white men, right? Who maybe on the surface we don't have anything in common, but had really great advice for how to navigate corporate America and career and all of the things. So, I would say be involved, find at least one organization to be a part of. You're meeting other peers, but then also potentially, people that are more established in their careers.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to be, around people that don't look like you. One of my friends and one of my mentors, whenever we go to a conference, he gives out his cell phone number and he's like, hey,
Yeah.
call me. I'll get with you for lunch, blah, blah, blah. And nobody ever calls him.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like we are waiting for people to take advantage of those opportunities so that we can
Mm-hmm.
give back and be a mentor. So, if somebody's ever like, hey, like I will work with you on this, like take advantage of that because they're not just saying that.
Yeah.
Um, your question about navigating failure was a really good one. I talk about this almost in the context of me um, completing my CPA license. I actually wrote a book about it and just how it's a very hard exam, like less than
Mm-hmm.
50% pass rate. So it's
Yeah.
up there with like passing the bar and passing the boards and all of the
Mm-hmm.
things. And it took me a longer time to pass it than it should have. Most of it
Yeah.
because I was like saying I was studying and then not studying, or,
Yeah.
messing around, not taking it serious. Um, but then I began to, when I did take it serious, then I was still having a hard time. I had to like reteach myself how to study and how to learn because as an adult, I was trying to study as if I was still in college, but I had been out of college for so long, right? My
Mm-hmm.
learning style was different.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up getting a study coach and then I created a study group to have some accountability because I grew up playing sports. I'm a team
Yeah.
person and just kind of surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded, have the
Mm-hmm.
same goals on the same track. So those two things really helped me kind of overcome. But one thing the CPA coach said, she said, you have to take the failures as lessons
Yeah.
and so you fail forward, which I had never really heard this before, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So that was even though if I was taking the practice test or taking an exam and I would fail it, I could still go back through the parts that I got wrong and learn from them, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's essentially how I view life now. I can mess up. Everybody makes mistakes, but what did you learn from that you won't make that mistake again? It helps you navigate the future more. So just continuing to not look at losses or failures in that way, but like lessons.
Yeah. My mom always says, and like that's like she's taught me this is also that like in the future you'll remember your failures more because they'll be as lessons rather than just like loses.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
feel like that's something that even though I haven't even like been through half of my failures that I'm gonna like have in the next few years because they will happen,
Right.
but I prepared that myself mentally to if something happens, it's okay, learn from it and turning it to a lesson so that you can look at it with a positive outlook in like the upcoming years after that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I was talking to a group of girls on Saturday about being in sports, and I think sport is a great
Yeah.
avenue to learn life lessons, right? If
Hmm.
you lose a game or you miss a shot, you don't just quit, right? Like you still got to show
Yeah.
up the next day for the next game. You take the next shot. So, but
Hmm.
you continue to practice and hone your skills. And so it's just kind of taking those lessons from sports or community organizations or choir, whatever, and applying that to
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. No, totally. I feel like the best thing you can do as a child is just to get involved as much as you can and as much as it feels like okay like you're not doing much to your community by just being involved you're taking part of that because in the future you're going to want to you feel more of a personal connection to give back to them or to speak out about them so I feel like that's super important
For
um
sure.
even like the environment you grow up in I think just growing up in an all like woman household mostly like dominated especially from a traditional perspective, it was always difficult to talk about women's rights because of the fear of what our other people outside are gonna say, what our relatives gonna say. You don't want to seem too much as a feminist in front of their eyes.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I've always been the one to speak up about politics and speak up about women's rights. And I feel that's like what's driven me and what's shaped me into the person I am today is because of the household and the environment I'm growing up in. It's pushed me to want to talk out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Mm-hmm. So is there like a certain like thing as a child that you believe pushed you more towards helping your community out and being more of an advocate?
You know, I was very fortunate as a kid. I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a two-parent household. Both of my parents worked and went to college. Um, and my parents were very intentional so that we understood like how we grew up
Mm-hmm.
and that everybody didn't have the same opportunity and experiences,
Yeah.
right? And I even began to see that more as I got more involved in community things. I was playing different type of sports because you just meet so many different people who don't grow up the same way. So, and then I grew up in, the church and the faith community. So there was always this kind of internal responsibility, I think, of giving back, caring about other people, speaking up on behalf of other people, which I think sometimes comes easier
Yeah.
for folks than others, right? And so
Yeah.
because I knew how fortunate I was, I never wanted to appear like I felt like I was better than other people or
Yeah.
all of these things. I just never wanted that. And so I would,
Hmm.
sometimes you get that. And I just wanted to combat that narrative. And then I would always be upset if I found out somebody was getting bullied or taken advantage of, right? So I just
Yeah.
think how, like, that kind of shaped how I just care about other people and making sure people should all have the same opportunities and experiences,
Hmm.
but they don't because why there's systemic barriers that exist, like
Yeah.
is no, are we going to do anything to like
Hmm.
level the playing field, like
Yeah.
there's bullying that goes on as a like all of this
Yeah.
like kind of relates, and so that's I just always felt like that equity and that inclusion is was very important. And I don't think when I was in school I could articulate it, but I just it would bother me a lot when I would see
Mm,
some of those like disparities or, injustices, like we
yeah.
can put a name to them now.
Yeah. I mean, most people, I think I was didn't know it was advocacy. I was being told I was too sensitive or too emotional or I had like too much empathy growing up. And that's hard for like a child to hear because it's like, okay, like why don't more people care about this? Why am I the only person asking questions? And being shut out by people when you ask those questions is what I fear like creates that fear in kids to not want to speak out when they're teens or like go into careers where they can be an advocate or even politics. And the fear, like also like the whole thing of having to only go into politics is the only way that you can speak out is also I like think it's why a lot of people don't want to pursue advocacy either.
Right.
So is there a reason why like you didn't go into a political career like mainly and you did decide to become a CPA? And were there a time where you just were like thinking of maybe wanting to go down a different path?
Yeah, I don't think growing up I knew that that was an option.
Hmm.
Um, I think like kind of like what you said earlier, it always seemed like, oh, politicians are over there, right? So my
Yeah.
mom was in the legal field, a paralegal. My dad is a school teacher and a dean. So I
Hmm.
knew career, profession. I didn't see people that were politicians or elected officials. So I didn't know it was a
Yeah.
thing. But then I think as I got older, when I realized it almost felt like you could get just as much done, if not more, being outside of traditional political roles, right? Because you don't
Hmm.
have to I, play the game, if you
Yeah.
will, right? And
Yeah.
so
You don't have to be a politician.
you have to be a politician. You're always
Yeah.
on, like, it depends on what role you're in. You're part
Hmm.
of a party. So, like, you have to use those same talking points.
Yeah.
And if you say something wrong, it could affect if you get voted for. And so now you're catering to whether people are going to vote for you or not, right? Which
Yeah.
it's good to a
Yeah.
certain extent, but like sometimes it becomes
Yeah.
inauthentic.
It's like the fear of having to be like 24/7.
Right. Yeah. And so is that a way to actually affect change?
Hmm.
And for some roles, some elected official roles, it's election every 2 years. And
Yeah.
so you're always kind of campaigning and campaigning. And so when is the work actually getting done?
Yeah.
So that, they have teams of people who are kind of moving the progress forward. So there's a space for that. But there's also a space for being in corporate America or
Hmm.
community where you can operate. Maybe you only care about education, so you can work specifically and advocate in the education field, right?
Yeah.
Or different industries, whatever you care about. So there's a little more flexibility. I feel like in my career now, I'm kind of right in the middle of the
Mhm.
different things. So I don't know if that answered your
Yeah.
question.
Oh no, it does. And I feel like your service on the Indiana CPA Society board is kind of that perfect mixture of service and being supportive and advocacy.
I think you're right. And that's how I view it, especially with the society. I give the example, um, how the Indiana CPA Society actually has like changed
Hmm.
laws, like in
Oh,
the
really?
state, right? And so, like before, in order to get your CPA license, you had to have 150 hours, which means you got to get your undergrad degree, and
Yeah.
then you have to either get a master's or 30 extra credits. And then you have to have worked under a CPA for 2 years. And
Hmm.
studies show that some of those requirements are a burden for certain demographics of people because now you have to go
Hmm.
to school for an extra year or two, right? That's
Yeah.
additional cost. And like there's opportunities that this don't exist. And also, it doesn't necessarily increase your chances of passing the exam just because you
Yeah.
take some extra classes, right?
Yeah.
So there's this argument that's happening, and Indiana has been on the front line of saying, I think there should be multiple pathways. That could be
Yeah.
one, but also we should have a pathway for people to start sitting for the exam once they have a bachelor's degree or 120
Mm-hmm.
hours, right? So just more
Yeah.
flexibility. So being able to be on the board for an organization that says like, here's an issue that we see and we want to do something about it, and then to
Mm-hmm.
actually see that it happens
Mm-hmm.
was very exciting because a lot of
Yeah.
times, depending on what side of the aisle you're on or depending on what issue you're fighting for, it's like
Yeah.
always a fight and you don't
Mm-hmm.
always see the wins. So to
Mm-hmm.
see that, a win, especially in Indiana, for us to be on the front end of like something good too was
Mm-hmm.
like really rewarding.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I feel like we always just hear about people fighting on the news and are these arguments are happening and stuff like that. So being able to see such a big win, especially in Indiana, is truly amazing. So how did you decide to advocate for something in a profession like the CPA profession?
Um, because there just was not great representation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I interned, when I started working as a professional, um, I there was never a peer that
Mm-hmm.
was a Black person that I worked directly with. There was a partner at the firm that was Black. There were a handful of people, but I never worked day to day with another person that looked like me.
Mm-hmm.
One of my seniors, he was a Black person, and then he ultimately left. It would just always seem like it was only
Yeah.
me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I haven't been involved with NABA in college. And that was the point of NABA too. And then I got involved with the CPA Society and it was like, okay, there's an issue here that I see, but I don't have to tackle it on my own because here are these organizations that are also trying to increase representation, not
Yeah.
just for Black people, but there's a Latino accounting association, right? There's an Asian
Mm-hmm.
American accounting association. There's women in accounting and finance, right? So here are these organizations that are working together to diversify their profession to make it more inclusive. So there's better representation, XYZ.
Yeah.
So really that was the premise of it. Like I felt like I was the only person that looked like me, even though like in Atlanta or Chicago,
Yeah.
like there were more people that looked
Yeah.
like me and they had a different experience,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm like, how, what's the difference? But understanding the Midwest and the demographics and all of the things, but to be connected with other associations who were
Mm-hmm.
still trying to do the work to diversify, but then also, even if it never moves the needle, you are still part of a community of people that look like you, understand where you came from, and are in the same
Mm-hmm.
profession, whether you work with them or not.
Yeah. No, representation is so important. I mean, especially for me too. I mean, like 10 years ago in Indiana, there wasn't that much diversity. I was going to school. I was probably the only brown girl in my classes, but there was like a few in the grade, and that was good enough for them. But it did impact the way I grew up. And then growing up, it was also in the traditional households, you could only be a doctor or a lawyer, or like it was girls were nurses, and that was like what
Hmm.
I saw. And my sister actually grew up wanting to become a dentist, and it was like I think sophomore year of high school where she was like, "No, I'm gonna pursue law and I'm gonna pursue
Yeah,
business and I want to own my own business. I don't care what anyone else says."
yeah.
So having her as like a someone to look up to pushed me
Hmm.
to want to like experiment with different careers and stuff. So
Yeah.
just growing up and then now seeing so many brown girls be CEOs and be like owning all
Hmm.
their own law firms and be CPAs because I didn't even know that was like a career option that I could pursue. It's
Hmm.
truly what's changed me. And then now I see the next generation of little girls that are in school just in Indiana alone, and they're already growing up and they're like, yeah, we already know we're gonna do this and we're gonna run for
Hmm.
president and we're gonna be
Hmm.
this. So I feel like the representation has just changed so much, and it's because of having like people like you in those spaces be the ones to speak up and want us to like actually come out and join you.
Yeah, and I would say to add to that, having people in spaces that are willing to give back,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I took the lifting as we climb motto super serious
Mm-hmm.
because if we didn't have people going back into schools, coming on podcasts saying like,
Yeah.
actually, this is a career and I look like you and I can do it and you can do it,
Yeah.
right? Like that's how you bring awareness to
Yeah.
an issue or a profession. And so I think it's great to have representation, but I think sometimes people forget, like, you got to give back, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to bring somebody else along. We should be
Yeah.
mentoring people. We should be telling our stories in high schools. And I'm like, accounting isn't the most like sexy profession,
Yeah.
and maybe people don't want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not going to stop me from, talking about it and
Yeah.
saying like, here's all the cool things that I've been able to do with this
Mm-hmm.
degree. And then I got the license, right? But
Yeah.
to your point, like how many I show up and I'm like, I'm an accountant, but I'm a black girl with red hair and
Yeah.
tattoos, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you think of an accountant, you think of a
A
white
white
man
man.
sitting in the corner with, his calculator. And I'm like, that's not even what the profession
Mm-hmm.
is anymore, right? So it's just bringing awareness to the opportunities.
Yeah. And you mentioned that like a personal brand plays a huge part in that. So what would you say, like what is that? And should Gen Z and Gen Z girls understand about like having their own personal brand and why it's so important?
Yeah, so for me, I think a personal brand is what people think when they see you, how you
Mm-hmm.
present yourself. A guy that I work with, he's like, your brand is like burgundy. Because I always have like
Yeah.
my cup and my phone and my car, like
Yeah.
all the things. Um, so, but it's like how you curate. I have tried to
Mhm.
like curate like how I show up in spaces.
Yeah.
I try to be the same person that I am on social media in real life. I don't use a bunch of filters. I, will just post workout pictures, like just like
Yeah.
the real authentic person.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to be transparent about my journey. I talk about failing the CPA exams. I talk about other mistakes because I think sometimes say how we say the goal, but we don't help
Yeah.
people understand
Mm-hmm.
the path that it takes to get there. And it's not
Yeah.
always easy. It's not always linear. And so people are better prepared if you tell them like I fumbled a little bit, I messed up a couple
Mm-hmm.
times, right? So that has become my brand.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because people can invite you to spaces. People will advocate on your behalf when you're not in the room. What are people thinking and saying about you?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there are some people who tend to be less open in public and they get great opportunities too.
Yeah.
My path has kind of been different, just like here, I'm an open book and you don't have
Yeah.
to go search for me, like I am here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So pick me, I'll do whatever you need me to do in order to help other
Mm-hmm.
people. So I think it's just important to understand like how you want to show up in the world, how you want people to view you. Do you want people to know who you are or do you not? I think for me, it was being more vocal, being more seen could increase the impact that I have in the
Mm-hmm.
things that I'm advocating for, whether it's the profession or community advocacy or church or whatever the message is. I know I have an audience because I've already been out here curating.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I feel my like I always have heard, especially from other women, that the way that you represent yourself, it doesn't matter if the person knows your backstory or anything embarrassing you've done. They don't know that. They don't know anything about you, but they will remember what you say to them in that moment and how you come up to them in that moment.
Yeah. And it's a responsibility because sometimes because I don't feel myself like as a celebrity, right? I
Yeah.
don't try to do everything super polished. I'm like, this is
Hmm.
what it is. So I feel
Yeah.
super normal.
Yeah.
But then every now and then somebody will come up and say, "Oh, I liked your post," or "I saw you just went here," or "You haven't been posting your workout pictures." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"What? Who are you?" And you're following me, right? So like there is a responsibility that also comes with using your voice and being
Hmm.
more vocal and seen and really just being an adult. We should all just be responsible with the things that
Yeah.
we say and do anyway. But there is also that side of it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of teenagers need to realize that too, especially as their digital footprint travels on. They don't quite realize that, okay, like what they're saying now and like they're actually like publicly speaking out about is going to like come out in the
Oh
future.
yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, I think Facebook started when I was in college, my freshman year. And so it wasn't as big of a thing.
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah.
it was, I'm glad that it wasn't a thing, but then also like I still get the Facebook memories and I'm like,
Hmm.
why did I say that? I was, 17 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but you can go in and hide stuff. So I
Hmm.
had did a little bit of cleanup, but I also feel like people should see the evolution of my growth, through college and now. But employers are very much looking at that,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Dating, or people are very much looking at your profile, people, potential friends.
Yeah.
Somebody invites me to an event and I'm like, who's going to be there? I'll go
Yeah.
and look up because I'm like, who am I going to be around,
Yeah.
right?
I
And
do the
so
same
that
thing.
digital footprint, to your point, is super important
Hmm.
because I have like not gone places, rejected friends on
Hmm.
Facebook because I'm like, I don't want to be associated with
Yeah.
whatever this is that you're putting out there.
Yeah. No, I was glad that I grew up with like an older sister that was always like, yeah, I know I'm gonna be famous. I know I'm gonna be successful. So I would always like think before posting something, I was like, okay, so like when I'm like, if I'm like famous in the future, do I want someone bringing this back up?
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So speaking back about memories, was there like what's your like most memorable experience that you've had in advocacy, whether it's political, business, community, or even in your family?
Well, I think the CPA example was one of my favorite because that's directly tied to like we moved a needle
Yeah.
there, like we broke a barrier, right?
Yeah.
And so that's like we did something super important. The other part that was a good experience was running for office and like I built a team, my campaign team was mostly people who were not politicians. They did not work
Yeah.
on campaigns. So my campaign manager, who's now one of my best friends, Ariel, who I was telling you about,
Yeah.
but then the rest of the people, like my sister was one of my campaign managers, and the
Mm-hmm.
guy that did my website did website. That was his profession. And then I had people that were like educators or community organizers or just like regular people. And
Mm-hmm.
we all came together as politicians to
Yeah.
run for office and to create this machine. And so that was a great experience that one, I could even get people to like buy
Yeah.
into what I was doing for, free. Like I had to raise money, but I wasn't
Yeah.
paying them a lot. And so they were
Mm-hmm.
doing it out of the goodness of their heart and me because they
Mm-hmm.
cared about the community, but they also trusted me and the work and the impact that I wanted to have.
Yeah.
And then being able to take that team, around the state and us just try to move and like try to be a influence and have an
Yeah.
impact was really a good experience
Yeah.
too.
No, I love that. And I feel like the people we find it just so refreshing to see someone who's not just like constantly reading off a script and trying to fit into like the stereotypes. And I think that we've seen that happen a lot in recent elections as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think we'll get more of that, which I think to your point is refreshing because
Hmm.
it's time across the country.
Yeah.
We look at the average age of elected officials, it's like
Yeah.
70. It's like ridiculously high. So it's like,
Yeah.
that's great. You could still be around and mentor people, but like make space, right, for
Yeah.
younger people, new ideas, new energy. So I think that folks like AOC,
Hmm.
and some younger folks that we have
Yeah.
here in this state will be great.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm so involved with advocacy as a Gen Z person. And I actually got on a call with Bernie Sanders a couple months ago, and he said the same exact thing about how important it is for us as a new generation to actually take over those spaces and push our way in and open those doors ourselves because a lot of people aren't going to open them for us.
Oh, that's right. They won't.
Hmm.
There's the mayor of Terre Haute, Indiana, Brandon
Yeah,
Saglin. He was running for office when I was running, and I was like, this dude's not even 30.
yeah,
Still, I don't think he is, but he's the mayor of a whole city,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
But I mean, super sharp. He can do the work, and I think he's a
Hmm.
great example for young people, to just like, hey, get out there, get involved, use your voice, build
Hmm.
coalition, and he's doing great.
Yeah, no, he came to our fall leadership conference last
Nice.
month, and he said the exact same thing, and he was pushing us to get into those careers, and especially in Indiana, stay here. And take over the careers and actually invite people in here because it's almost as if like this next generation, they only see it as having to go into cities, like
Mhm,
big cities, New York, and that's the only way we can make an impact. But we forget
mhm,
about that the biggest impact we can make is on the little towns in our own
mhm.
like communities in our own cities that we actually grew up in.
Yeah. I grew up on the Far East Side. I went to Warren and I'm like, I could have taken my education and talents anywhere else, but why
Yeah.
would I do that, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm from here. I care about the community that I grew up in. I can make just as much, if not more, change here
Yeah.
than anywhere else, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
we just get more people to think about that having an impact on like where you grew up and surrounding yourself in that community with other people that think like
Mm-hmm.
you, then you can really, have an impact and affect
Yeah.
change. I think sometimes we end up in silos and it becomes overwhelming because you think, oh, I have to do this all myself. But
Yeah.
you don't have to do it yourself. There's a
Mm-hmm.
ton of people out here. There's a ton, even of young professional groups and advocacy organizations that like would, love to have more people get involved.
Mm-hmm. So is that the advice that you'd give to Gen Z is to just go out in your own communities and get involved?
For sure. Yep. Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
political, professional, social, um, if people like basket weaving, there's like a club for basket weaving,
Yeah.
right? And so like you don't have to like force friendships these days. You can find groups and associations of people that are like-minded and want to affect change, and it becomes less overwhelming. You feel more connected to the community and to the mission. So that's always
Mm-hmm.
my advice, is for young people to get involved with something.
Yeah. And what about to those who want to speak out, but with this whole like rise of like such a divide between two parties and that fear of having to choose one, what would you say to those who want to speak out about just the most basic things but have that fear inside of them?
Yeah, I think being cautious now is super important.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more important to be bold and cautious and speak up for what's right, regardless of who agrees or disagrees, right? I think a
Mm-hmm.
time for truth will ultimately like come back around.
Yeah.
So I just encourage people to find safe spaces and avenues to share that truth and opinion.
Yeah.
It's not everything is meant to just share on social media and all of
Yeah.
that, because it's just some people don't even want to hear it. And so they will argue you down that the sky isn't blue when it clearly is blue, right? And so it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what the truth is.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some self-preservation there that's like, okay, is this a good audience? Is this a good place to share what I'm
Yeah.
actually thinking? If,
Yeah.
but it goes back to our previous point. Find a safe space, find community where you can have those thoughts and to share them.
Yeah.
There have been a couple examples when I was on a board or boards and I did not speak up and I did not like the feeling afterwards. And so from that
Yeah.
moment on, I was like, if I got something to
Mm-hmm.
say and I feel strongly about an issue, I'm going to say it when it's appropriate. I'll
Yeah.
never not say anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage people to use their voice, but you got to be smart,
Yeah.
and about where you do that.
Yeah. And I've learned that being an advocate is not always politically speaking, but speaking with empathy.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, because we're talking about
Yeah.
humans, right? And so just
Hmm.
kind of thinking from that perspective.
Yeah. Well, this has been such an inspiring conversation. So thank you so much, Zane, for coming on our podcast and sharing your story and insights. Are there any final words of inspiration that you would like to share with our listeners today?
Final words would definitely be to use your voice and to find community to be engaged with.
I love that. Well, if anyone wants to hear more about Zanae's story and her words a little bit more, she does have a book. Zanae, if you could share the name of your book, please.
Sure. Yeah, so my book is called Finish. It's on Amazon. ZeNai Brooks was my maiden name. So it's Finish Leveraging Career, Sport, Faith, and Failure. And it journeys my journey to passing the CPA exam, leveraging being involved in sports, my faith, all of the things. So it's really more of a self-help book for folks, like helping people to accomplish their goals.
Well, I know what my next purchase will be.
I love that.
I really truly appreciate all of your words of wisdom that you shared today and highlighting that there are so many different pathways to advocacy and it comes in many forms through different professions, volunteering, or community leadership. Advocacy isn't just politics. And thank you everyone listening today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, share, and follow Student-Led Conversations. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making an impact. See you next time.
Student-Led Conversations is brought to you by the Center for Accounting Transformation, empowering the next generation of leaders through student-focused programs that build confidence, leadership, and real-world connection. The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. If you're a student, discover how you can lead, learn, and grow in the profession. If you're a professional, explore ways to give back, mentor, or sponsor student-driven initiatives. To learn more, please visit our website, www.we.improvetheworld.net, and unlock the power of the accounting profession.